Now, a question that people regularly ask me under my UFO debunking videos is, do you actually believe in aliens being UFOs? In some UFOs being extraterrestrial in nature, being controlled by intelligent alien beings or something, that some of the footage that we see, some of the reports might be real? Now, if you would have asked me that question 10 years ago, I probably would have said, yeah, of course, some of them must be extraterrestrial in nature. Now, I looked into this subject for more than 25 years at this point, from the first sightings of like Kenneth Arnold, Betty and Barney Hill cases, the Ariel School incident, the Westall UFO, Project Blue Book, the Phoenix Lights, the Hudson Valley UFO wave. Now we have the modern cases with Commander Fravor's Tic Tac, going all the way back to the 2001 Disclosure Project hosted by Dr. Stephen Greer in front of the National Press Club at the time. Look, I've seen it all. Often people comment on my videos and say, dude, but you haven't seen this case. It's like, no, dude, I've seen it. I'm not saying I've seen all cases, okay? There are some cases, obviously, I've not explored, but for the most part, I've looked into the subject for a very long time and I've seen a lot of it. Now, I did a poll on my YouTube community page a few days ago, 6 days ago, and I asked people, in your opinion, are some UFOs extraterrestrial? And okay, first I want to say, like, some of the replies, dude, it's so stupid. Some people like, well, actually, extraterrestrial theoretically also includes meteorites. Is that what you mean when you say it's like, dude, sit back, go back into your box, close the lid, okay, and just don't come out again. You know exactly what we're talking about here. If you want to act like a freaking moron, then don't even engage with this channel. Anyway, before I get too upset, 68% of 1,000 people who have participated said, yes, I believe that some UFOs are extraterrestrial in nature, meaning intelligently alien ships, or whatever you want to call them, and only 32% of those 1,000 people said, no, I don't think any sightings that we have out there are extraterrestrial in nature. Now, I want to do a little bit of a video where I break down almost like a counterpoint to all these sources out there that don't question the existence of alien UFOs on our planet at all. Like all these documentaries, all the Twitter channels that just constantly bombard you with random and very questionable UFO footage. If you look at the subreddits about UFOs, if you look on Facebook, there's very, very little skeptical conversation going on and people actually asking reasonable skeptical questions about the subject. There are sources for that, but it's really not in the center of the conversation around UFOs. So I want to do a video in which I break down some of the popular arguments, some of the logical fallacies, and just really go into quite a bit of depth around why I personally think, after looking at this for 25 years, that no UFO cases are actually alien or extraterrestrial in nature. And before you go under this video and write in the comments that like, but dude, the government, they classify all these documents, or they've confiscated radar data in the past, and what about the government talking about UAPs? Dude, we're going to touch on all that in this video, okay? I'm going to break it all down one by one, so please stay tuned. Just watch the video, go through it with me, lean back, and if by the end of it you still have the feeling that you need to tell me why I'm wrong, that's totally fine. I'm not claiming that I'm ultimately right here. I'm just sharing my perspective, my experience, and kind of the insights that I gained after looking at this subject for 25 years. Now, before we get into the actual video, I want to put a disclaimer out there. UFOs, in the sense of unidentified flying objects, are definitely real, okay? We know that there are things being spotted in the skies that we don't know what they are. And please share your sightings underneath, okay? I want to hear your sightings. I'm not saying, no, if you saw something, you're definitely wrong. That's not my point. But we know that unidentified flying objects exist. My point is, I just don't think they are alien in nature. Alien meaning extraterrestrial. You know what I mean. Also, government cover-ups are real. Okay, but just because the government denies they have any tangible evidence of extraterrestrial life doesn't automatically mean that they lie or cover up evidence. That is a logical fallacy. It might be the case, but it might also not be the case. It might just be them giving us an authentic window on where they're currently at with this research. Also, additional intelligent life in the universe beyond Earth is almost guaranteed, with a 99.999 whatever percentage, okay? I believe in life beyond Earth, possibly even intelligent life. It's a numbers game. Even just the part of the universe that we have explored using telescopes, that we are aware of, is so unfathomably big that obviously somewhere out there must be intelligent life, and the probability suggests that aliens are out there. But again, just because they're out there doesn't mean they're here, okay? Those are two different things, because you often then get people commenting saying, well, your point makes no sense because obviously aliens are real. It's like, yes, they are. Probably, most probably they are real. That doesn't automatically mean that they're here. This is exactly the problem. The UFO community needs to be far more skeptical and scientific in their approach. The problem with a large part of the UFO community is that they are not looking for logical explanations of what we see. That's not their interest. They are looking for aliens. They find a video or they find a report and they're like, yeah, that's gotta be it. That's aliens. And if that's your starting point and not, what could it be? Sure, there are 500 explanations. Aliens is one of them. Let's look at all of them. Let's start with number one. At some point we come to aliens, but let's go through the other ones first and really distinguish what we're looking at here, what possible explanations could be. They're not doing that. They want to believe and they're actively looking for aliens. Now, coming back to a point that I made a minute ago, and again, it's a comment that I get quite often, people commenting under my videos and saying, well, look, I didn't believe, but then I saw something and now I believe, okay? I saw the thing. And look, and as I said, that's fair. That's a fair point. I don't know what you saw. I wasn't there. I have no idea. And I'm not here to judge you. But keep in mind, when you see something you can't explain, humans in general are terrible observers. We're not good at seeing things in the sky and really analytically understanding what they are because we don't have the geological knowledge, the scientific knowledge. There's such a huge, broad knowledge base that would be required to really understand what we are seeing. So quite often we see things we can't explain and we jump to conclusions based on what we want to see, and then we fill in the rest of the gaps with pop culture references. Okay, it's just a reality. That's just how it works. We've seen it time and time again. Even trained observers like pilots or military personnel can misread aerial phenomenon. My father used to be a pilot, okay? His whole life he used to be a pilot. So I met a lot of pilots. I asked them these questions because, like I said, for the past 25 years, I was very interested in this subject. So I would bite into that sour apple and ask these guys because it's kind of a cringy subject to ask a pilot, but you get all kinds of stories. And one red thread that goes through all these stories that I got from people, they say, oh yeah, I've seen wild stuff in my 40 years up in the air, but every single thing was explainable. Not immediately. I often was left with a feeling of confusion, being like, Jesus, what was that today? But then I would research it. Maybe I speak to a friend who's a geologist or whatever, and ultimately there is an explanation for it that I just didn't know at the time. So even pilots, even military personnel, they're just humans. They don't have infinite knowledge about everything. They can misread events. I guess another example is the Rendlesham Forest incident, which was just military personnel, in my opinion, massively misreading what went on that night in those woods. And I made a video about that. I debunked the Rendlesham Forest incident. At least I shared my opinion on it, my take on what I think happened that night. Check that out down in the description. I'll link it there. But I guess my point is just to say, when you saw something that you can't explain, and it is not literally a giant, shiny, metallic disc that hovers 10 meters over your head. And even then, you gotta question it. It could be a military project. It could be some government stuff. It could just be your brain playing tricks on you. You know, brains hallucinate. We know that electromagnetic waves and many other factors can play tricks on our brains and trigger things that we believe we see, but we actually don't. So again, even you saw something that in your mind is irrefutable, you should still question it, in my personal opinion. But let's get into some obvious logical fallacies with a lot of these aliens are definitely here and flying around our planet kind of arguments. Think about it this way. If aliens have the capabilities to traverse light years of space, right? Travel faster than light, to reach us, bend space and time potentially, right? And make it to our planet through the vastness of space, do you reckon they then can't camouflage their presence? Like any UFO you see that has lights on it and stuff, it's like immediately, like it just makes no sense. Why would they hover over our shorelines, mutilate cows, draw patterns in corn? You know what I mean? All this makes no sense. If you just ask yourself how that sits in the context of these alleged creatures coming from that far away, reaching our planet, and then they do that, it just makes no sense. And then they crash, right? It's like a faulty car on a highway. It's like, oh God, the engine. Oh God, the engine's breaking down of my UFO that just traversed 60 trillion light years of space. You know what I mean? Or they get shot down by a missile, like a missile that for them, considering the speed that they can probably propel their spaceship at, here comes this rocket, you know, that's run by fossil fuels and it flies towards, and we're shooting down these super advanced alien spaceships with our little missiles. It's like, it makes no sense. the whole thing, already the starting point makes no sense. But coming from this original sighting from Kenneth Arnold, right, and looking at how UFOs have been slowly embedded in our pop culture, then with Roswell, and then with the early movies, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the stories, the Betty and Barney Hill case, everything comes together and builds this idea that there must be something to it. All these stories are out there, it must be real, and that consciousness of it must be real embeds itself in our collective pop culture consciousness and leads to the point where people don't question it anymore and don't put it through the filters of logical fallacies like the ones I just listed. If you just think about it from that angle, it almost already falls apart. And beyond that, I mean, we've seen UFOs, we've observed them throughout our history, going back all the way to the 16th century, where we have reports of people seeing unidentified objects, lights and shields, whatever, in the sky. We see it in ancient art. But till this day, there is not a single piece of tangible evidence that has made it into the public. And sure, you can always say, well, there is evidence. There's this video or there's this report. Or that's not evidence. Okay, we need just one tangible piece of evidence from these thousands, if not millions of sightings through the history of humanity, but not a single one has surfaced, okay? And to be honest, it doesn't even need to be a physical piece of an alien spacecraft, so to say. Just a truly unexplained sighting that has been captured by hundreds of people on their phones could already generate undeniable credibility. That's the other thing. You see so many craft flying over urban areas and cities and these lights, ships flying. It's like, dude, if that would be the case, we would have exactly that. Hundreds and hundreds of people would be filming it, and it would become undeniable, even we don't have the physical, tangible evidence. And I can already hear it's like, but what about the Phoenix Lights? Thousands of witnesses. Well, watch my video on the Phoenix Lights. Lots of people disagree on my debunk. I'll link it down in the description as well. But in my opinion, that can also be quite easily explained what happened that day. These people did see something, but it was not an alien spacecraft. Again, watch the video down in the description. And beyond the Phoenix Lights, I can already see people like, yeah, but what about, I don't know, the Jerusalem UFO? Well, there were at least 4 recordings of it. It's like, yeah, okay, that was debunked as well. It's on my list, actually. I'm going to break it down in a future episode. It's explaining what happened there. Point being, there is no irrefutable evidence that is tangible, that is credible, that enough people witness to actually make it irrefutable. Despite every single person basically having a 4K camera in their pocket at this point. It's not happening. Why? Why is it not happening? You gotta ask yourself that question if you're a believer. And a lot of people simply don't even know what evidence means, right? They're like, well, we have photographs, we have witness testimony from military people and, with reputable sources. It's like, yeah, but that's not irrefutable evidence. Anyone can make something up. I can tell you an incredibly believable alien story that I experienced, write a book about it. That doesn't mean it's real. That just means I told you a story. I can use my computer to create fake CGI UFO incidences, and it's gonna be hard to debunk it, but it's not real. It's not irrefutable evidence. So even the basic understanding of what irrefutable evidence means is often misconstrued and not understood by a lot of the people. And again, it comes back to this point of I want to believe. They don't even have an interest in really understanding what I'm talking about here right now. They want to believe. That is it. And that sits above everything. It sits above scientific questioning. It sits above the definition of what evidence should be and what is actually tangible evidence. It is, in many ways, like a religion. Okay, it can't be proven, but if you believe in it strong enough, then it's real for you. And I know, there are a lot of people who are going to comment like, yeah, but we have radar data, right? We have plenty of radar data that is very hard to explain, right? If you speak to air traffic controllers, they will tell you, it's like, I did speak to air traffic controllers, okay? Again, through the job of my father, I know people who worked in air traffic control. These things happen. You see sometimes blimps and objects on the radar that are hard to explain. Not very often. It's not something that you desire, as an air traffic controller, but it happens. And it can be a huge variety of things. That's another thing. People don't speak to these kinds of people. They watch an alien documentary and there this alleged air traffic controller says, well, I saw it accelerates with Mach 10. It's like, okay, all right, okay. Let's talk to 15 different air traffic controllers and hear their stories. What could it be? Let's evaluate what we just heard. But people don't have that capability, right? They don't have the ability to speak to 10 different air traffic controllers. I didn't as well, but whenever I met someone like that, I would would ask them these questions, and it's very surprising what kind of answers you actually get from these people if they're not featured in an alien documentary. And when speaking about radar data, I am well aware that in the past the government has come in and classified radar data, right? They came in, certain things happened on the radar, they came and said like, what just happened? Nobody talks about that. We're classifying this material. It totally stays under wraps. There are reports out there that claim that. Now, guys, that's just what the government does. Okay, if this, for example, is suspected to be part of some kind of secret project, and it doesn't even need to be a secret military aircraft, it could be something that is trying to block radar technology, like some kind of experiment they're doing that tries to mislead radar readings, then this is stuff they don't want to be talked about, so they classify it. Also, the government classifies documents in bulks. Okay, often, like especially with the Kelvin UFO, again, I did a video about that. I'll link it in the description as well. You can check it out. But like in the case of the Kelvin UFO, people often bring forward this argument and say, yeah, but these images, these alleged images of these UFOs, they've been classified by the government. Now, the government doesn't go out there and say, oh, let me look at this specific image. That shows an alien spacecraft. Let's classify it. No, they say this whole cabinet of 6,000 folders that contain previously classified information, we classify that for another 50 years. They don't look at each single thing. They don't care. They're just like, yeah, there's probably some sensitive stuff in there. All of this, what you see here, is now classified for another 50 years. And then people lose their mind, believers lose their mind, because there's one image, this one alleged alien UFO image has now been classified for another 50 years. Now let's talk about the Disclosure Project, okay? This is a term, a reoccurring term. Again, I kind of briefly mentioned it in the beginning. First time I heard about it was in 2001. When Dr. Stephen Greer was holding this Disclosure Project event, like a press conference with loads of allegedly credible witnesses in front of the National Press Club, and loads of high-ranking military personnel was put up on the mic, and they told their quite incredible stories. And they're great stories in there, no doubt about it. But since then, even now in 2024, right, we get these people constantly saying, disclosure, it's just around the corner. We are almost there, okay? Like, it's just one little thing that we need. Soon it's gonna come, right? Whether it's Jeremy Corbell or David Fravor or David Grush, right? It's Grush. Yeah, the Grush is gonna bring disclosure. Everything will be oh no, Jaime Maussan and the mummies, the alien Nazca mummies. Now it's disclosure. This time it's for real. It's like, dude, I don't know if you guys looked at it for as long as I have, but at some point you got to be like touching your head and be like, this is so stupid, man. Like over and over and over and over again, they tell us the same story, claiming that this time we're so close. I mean, dude, since 2001 this has been going on. This is ridiculous. I mean, if it's like really young people who are like 18 or whatever, all right, or their early 20s, and they don't have the context of this going on for so long, I can understand. Okay, I get it. They just don't know that has been going on for so long. But a lot of people, they're in my age, okay, and they're even older than me, and they also preach, soon, disclosure is coming soon. It's like, how come, dude? Where have you been the last 30 years? Again, it's a logical fallacy. Is it that I read this somewhere? I don't know if it's true. I know it from the Far Cry game. Someone said it's the definition that Albert Einstein used for insanity. I don't know if this is true, but he said, you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results. Right? Like, at what point do you say, dude, we've done this so many times. Every time I hear the word disclosure, my alarm bells go off because I've been fooled by that 1,000 times. Now, one more really important point that I want to make is the history of UFO designs. Okay, if we look at how UFOs or how UAPs look throughout time, it is actually very interesting. And there is a great article that I found in regard to that, written by Bridget Johnston. And she says, I explored what UFOs looked like throughout the history, what flying saucers have to say about who we are on Earth, okay? And I love that title because it really says so much more about us than it says about aliens. And if you have looked into UFO cases and the history of it in the past, there's no way that you didn't hear about this case. I think it is one of the earliest recorded cases of unexplained aerial phenomenon. It happened in 1561 over Nuremberg. And it continues to be an exciting event, like for many modern UFO enthusiasts. Most likely, obviously, it's very hard to debunk something that happened in 1561, okay? Theories are that it was some kind of sundog event. You can look that up. It's a relatively rare phenomenon that occurs when you have like just the right weather conditions, and it gives the illusions of there being several suns in the sky. Obviously, people in 1561 were not as educated as they are today, so they might misread something like that. Again, we don't know what exactly it was, but This is kind of the running theory of what people believe. And coming from that, we get lots of other examples in ancient art of like people traveling in spacecraft or little disc-shaped UFOs in the sky behind Mother Mary and stuff. In that regard, I recommend the, 3-4 hours long YouTube video. It's called Ancient Aliens Debunked. I'll link it down in the description as well. It's great. The dude goes into a lot of claims that Ancient Aliens makes and like debunks them one by one, and one of it is also the meaning and purpose of these kind of depictions in these paintings. It's obviously not aliens, but again, you need to have the historical context. You need to be almost like an art historian to be able to put into context what we see in these paintings and how it makes sense in the bigger picture. But look at the design of some of this art, right? They are depicted like shields, like flat discs quite often, because that's what people referenced at the time. Okay, people were using shields and that's a thing that people could relate to. So if you would see something in the sky, whether it's a light or something that appears circular, you might just link it to it being something like a shield. And if you then want to paint that thing that you saw, you might depict it as a shield. You take the reference from your collective consciousness that was contemporary at the time. And then coming from that, moving into the, like, for example, the World War II era, where suddenly you got all these kinds of designs, right, for the UFOs that was very much inspired by the war machinery that people had at the time. Again, building on visual references that people had at the time. They're clearly designed and kind of thought up like to be contemporary and cool and futuristic at the time, but they're very much a reflection of how we designed war machines at that time and what the 1940s idea of science fiction and futurism was. The design was often mechanical, inspired by aircraft or fiction literature. Again, of the time, you're all familiar with like the Nazi Flugscheiben kind of stuff. And again, from our perspective nowadays, they feel kind of retro and clunky. Do you know what I mean? They feel like they're coming from the 1940s. The way they are designed, the way the lines work, it doesn't feel contemporary. And then later we got, Bob Lazar's sports model, which was kind of in keeping with some of the Billy Meier UFOs. And again, considering the references of the time, in my opinion, they very much look like they took like visual cues from like a DeLorean or something. You know what I mean? Like cool, contemporary, futuristic cars and designs of the time informed that kind of design. And here we are in the early 2020s. And now the design has shifted again. Now it's not the DeLorean-style Bob Lazar sports model. Now we're moving into Tic Tac shapes. Clean, white, streamlined shapes. Just like contemporary shapes that we get from Apple, for example. Again, a piece of collective pop culture design consciousness that we have as a nation, as a global Earth. So obviously there's much more to this story and this design evolution, and you could break this down in like a 6-hour video in and of itself. I just want to touch on it kind of on a baseline level, because why do aliens adopt the design of their ships to our design trends on our Earth? Do you see what I mean? Why do they design their ships based on our collective pop cultural references that we have in that particular time? Well, they don't, because it's a human-made mystery. We create the UFOs. We did the whole thing. We made it up. Again, it doesn't mean that we didn't try to make some kind of disc-shaped object fly around, but the idea that these are alien spacecraft, it makes no sense if you look at that design aspect of it. Ultimately, UFOs and aliens is a story about humans and our fear of lack of understanding, but our desire to not be alone, right? We have this overwhelming desire that we're not alone in this universe, right? That would be a freaking sad story, right? If it's just us out there in that huge vastness of darkness, dude, that's scary in and of itself. So it's a deeply human desire to crave that there's something else out there, but we can't uncover it at the moment. We can't know for sure. So we just make up our own story. We make up our own story about aliens, about extraterrestrials, about humans coming from the future, however we build it, but it is ultimately a story about humans and not a story about actually extraterrestrials. And in my opinion, to kind of conclude this whole video, the much more interesting question about all this is, how did we as humans get to this point that so many people believe this stuff to be true? Again, how did the original Kenneth Arnold sighting, amplified through all the other pop cultural references, through the movies, through the stories, through Roswell, how did that move into our collective consciousness, into our pop culture, lead to all these movies, lead to all these alleged sightings, right? You know what I mean? It's become such a huge phenomenon and story around humans on this planet That's really, really fascinating. For example, the modern UFO fascination, it's very much a story about like early Cold War anxieties, amplified by shows like The X-Files. Do you know what I mean? Teaching us that the government is hiding something, that there's some kind of big government conspiracy. And these building stones somehow engraved themselves into our collective perception of the world, that now we're at a point where so many people believe it to be real and they don't question it from a point of reality or skepticism. And that's what I find truly fascinating. The psychological phenomenon that sits behind all that. How did we get to that point? And I might make a video about that in the future, breaking that down separately, because again, if I prepare for that and break down a few interesting points, I think it's an interesting story in and of itself, how we got to the point where we are now. But just to kind of really conclude it this time, to really find kind of a closing comment to this quite lengthy video. And thanks so much for watching. If you're still watching this right now, then thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. It's really great. Smash the like button if you're enjoying it. Smash dislike if you don't, but please, I prefer smashing like buttons, okay? But anyway, closing word, it has become, with all that amplification I just described, a very, very profitable business model for many. And all those UFO personalities out there, right? It's almost like a cult. People build their UFO beliefs around certain personalities, right? Some people are like, oh no, this guy, David Grush, he's the Messiah. Bob Lazar, he speaks the truth. You know what I mean? It's become like the UFO phenomenon, beyond it not being critical enough, kind of where I started the video, also has like this personality, almost cult of personality problem. Plus, it's extremely profitable for a lot of these people. That also then amplifies the false narrative even further. Right? It is like a circle jerk of amplifying false narratives. Again, I find it super, super fascinating. I just think it would be much more valuable to have a slightly more collectively skeptical mindset towards this stuff and don't believe every single thing that you or whoever you choose UFO Messiah says. And to be honest with you, I think we can see the early stages of that. I personally feel, look, I'm deep in kind of the skeptics movement. I'm part of it myself, I would claim. And I can see that it gains more and more popularity on Twitter, on social media. Of course, you're still bombarded with all kinds of very questionable short pieces of film and whatever. But you can see more and more also on Reddit that more and more people, even in the UFO subreddits, become skeptical. And they're not swallowing it up immediately. Also, whenever I do videos in which I debunk maybe statements of some of these UFO personalities I just spoke about, I had it in the past that they quite angrily comment under my videos and say, how dare you? You don't even know. So there's also that side of it where I feel that a lot of these people who are currently making nice and juicy money off these false narratives that are out there, they are slowly starting to feel the water rising. And they're like, oh damn, people are not eating it up as easy anymore as they maybe did 5, 10, 15 years ago. So I think we're moving into the right direction, and maybe a video like this can help a few people to open their mind towards a slightly more skeptical mindset. I'm not telling you to not believe in UFOs. Again, if you've seen something, if you think it is a credible phenomenon, good on you. I just wanted to make this video to share my personal opinion. It's my opinion. You can have yours. And I would appreciate if we could have a dialogue about that down in the comments as well. So don't hesitate to please share your thoughts on it. If you're a believer and you're convinced it's all real for whatever reason, share it down in the comments. If you had your own sighting that convinced you, share what you saw in the comments as well. I would appreciate to hear from you. Also, beyond subscribing and smashing the like button, you can also join our Discord, okay? It's a place, it's a community where lots of people, like me, for example, and many others hang out. We've just crossed 600 members. It's fantastic. I'm very proud. But you can join that for free. The link to that is in the description. You just hit that link. If you've got Discord installed, it will throw you on our server. You can join the conversation over there, and I would love to meet you and have a chat with you on our Discord. Thanks so much for watching. Again, if you're still here and watching this, I greatly appreciate you. Thanks so much. Have a great day. And I'll see you in the next one.